This is part 4 of the tutorial for TalkToMe, an app that has a text box a user can type in, and then a button they can press to make text-to-speech speak whatever they typed in the text box. In part 1, you created the button and you made it say a preset message, something you chose, when it was pressed. In part 2, you added the text box and changed the code so that when the button was pressed, text-to-speech would speak whatever was in the text box. In part 3, you changed your code. You made it so that when the button was clicked, first it would check to see if the text box was empty. And if the text box's text was blank, that is, if the user did not type anything, then text-to-speech would speak an error message to help them understand how to use your app. If the text box was not empty, then text-to-speech would still speak whatever message they had typed in the text box. In part 4, we will make the app a little bit more fun and flexible. Instead of always saying the same error message, we will create a list of possible error messages and then change the code so if the text box is empty, then text-to-speech will choose a random error message from the list and then say that. Let's make sure we understand the algorithm first. Remember, the algorithm is the set of steps or instructions for doing something, described in human language. This is the algorithm from the end of part 3. When the button is pressed, if the text box is empty, speak an error message. Otherwise, meaning if it is not empty, speak what's in the text box. This should be review. Here is how we will change the algorithm to use random error messages. The gray text shows the old algorithm. The black text is things we will add or change. The biggest change is this. We will add this whole section so that when the app first starts, it will create a space in the device's memory to store a list, and then it will fill up that list with error messages. Then, when the button is pressed, if the text box is empty, it will speak a random error message from that list. Random means the computer will choose one. You will not know what it will be. It is like a surprise every time. Quick review. The big changes are, when the app first starts, a space in the device's memory will be made, and you will fill up that space with a list of error messages. Then if you need an error message, the app will randomly choose one. When we say create a space in memory to store something, we are talking about making a variable. Variables exist in almost every programming language. For example, you probably created them in Python. We can make simple variables like x equals 4. Then, whenever we use the letter x, the computer understands that we mean the number 4. This is like in algebra. Variables can also have longer names, like list of fruits. And they don't have to store just one number. They can hold a whole list of things. My list of fruits here is apple, banana, and orange. Here's what those examples look like in App Inventor. Instead of just being able to type the letter X, we have to click on Variables, then grab this orange block that says Initialize Global Name to. It doesn't even say the word variable. But to make a variable named X, you take that block, and where it says Name, you type the letter X. It works the same way whether you are storing one number or storing a whole list of things. Here is a quick example of how to make a list of things in App Inventor. We will need to use that in creating a list of error messages for our TalkToMe app. Remember, we are going to add, when the app first starts, create a space in memory to store a list. So that will look a lot like this example here. Then fill that list with possible error messages. So instead of a list of fruits, you will make a list of things like, hey, you didn't type anything, and I can't talk if you don't type, and you need to type something. Then we will also change the code so that when it needs an error message, it will choose a random one from the list. Let's see how to turn this algorithm into code, switching from human language to computer language. We don't need to change anything on the designer side. We are not adding any new components. We are only changing the code, so we only need blocks. First, we'll start by creating a space in memory to store the list, by creating a variable. Click Variables on the left, then choose the first block, Initialize Global Name to. Then here, click the word Name, erase it, and then type a new name for this variable. A name that will help you remember that this is the list of error messages. So I will call mine List of Messages. You can pick a different name if that makes more sense to you. Now we can see clearly that something needs to go here. And what we need to do is tell App Inventor that that variable will hold a list. So click on Lists on the left side, then choose the second block that says Make a List. That should snap into place. Then we can do the third part, fill that list with possible error messages. For each error message, you'll want to grab a bright pink text block and then type a message in it. Again, it is your choice whether these are a little bit mean or kind and helpful. If you want to have more than 2 things on the list, you can make more spots to put pink blocks by clicking the Settings button, then dragging more of these item blocks into the list. If you decide you don't want that many items after all, you can rearrange them or put them back. When you are happy with your list, then it is time to change this part of the code so that instead of always saying the same error message, it will choose a random message from the list. Here's how we do that. You can take off the pink block that was there and either throw it away or add it to your list. Then what goes here? A way to say, get a random item from this list. And here's how we do that. Click Lists on the left, then choose the block that says, pick a random item from a list. That will fit right there. Then here it is asking you, pick a random item from which list? You want to get a random item from the list that is named List of Messages. You can get a block that says List of Messages by clicking Variables. Then this second orange block that says Get. Then click the small arrow and choose the name of the list that you want. Now it says Global List of Messages here, which is what this block says. So now, when the button is clicked, if the text box's text equals nothing, that is, if the text box is empty, then text-to-speech will speak, but what message will it pick? It will pick a random item from the list called List of Messages. So the computer will look up here to List of Messages and then choose a random thing from that list. If that's still a little bit confusing, try re-watching part of the video, reading your code carefully, or asking a neighbor or teacher for help. If you think you understand how it should work, then try testing your project. Leave the text box empty, and make sure that when you hit the speak button a lot of times, you hear different error messages. If that works, then you're ready to start adding on other things to your app or changing it in other fun ways. Check out the written version of these instructions for some ideas, think of something on your own, or ask a neighbor or a teacher for an idea. Don't forget to give yourself a pat on the back for a job well done. You learned a lot of new coding concepts here. Way to go!